Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal talk. Very convincing performance by CF Montreal in a 4-0 win versus Minnesota United. Another win at home by shutout. Clean sheet with Jonathan Sirois and Hernan Losada having a lot to do with that. A defender who's really coming on strong over the last couple of weeks. What a game he had on Saturday night. Who are we talking about? You'll find out in just a couple of minutes, as well as a striker who scored a couple of big goals against his former team, so no need to celebrate for him. We finally found out how this team wants to play. They have their blueprint. This is what we saw on Saturday night. We'll discuss it and much more as we are in the international break, and the next time that they make their way on the pitch will be on Thursday at practice, and their next game will be on the 21st of June. We're talking CF Montreal. I'm Marinaro. Tristan D'amours, sports writer with the Canadian Press, joining me. He's coming up.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal talk, and joining me, like I said, he's also an associate editor with Sportsnet. Tristan D'amours, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Good, Tony. Thanks for inviting me. Good to be back.
You're very, very welcome. Thanks for accepting the invitation. It's always good to have you on. Without further ado, let's make our way to CF Montreal's starting lineup a couple of nights ago on Saturday night, in which, by the way, they introduced officially and finally the blue jersey, right? We had a chance to see it. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love it. We'll get to you in just a second on that. All right, so here is your starting 11. Sirois in goal, a three-man backline of Camacho with Campbell to his right and Corbo to his left. Wanyama and Saliba in front of the back line. Zachary Brault-Guillard, right wing back. Lapalainen at left wing back. And Choignard in behind Toye and Sunusi Ibrahim. A 3-4-1-2 formation for Hernan Losada's side. Your subs, James Pantemis, Joel Waterman, Aaron Herrera, Bryce Duke, Matko Miljevic, Sean Rea, Chinozo Ofor, Ariel Lassiter, and, of course, Robert Thorkelson. There's your lineup. Let's keep it up for a while here. Tristan, what did you think going into the game of that starting 11? Is there anything that really caught your attention?
Well, obviously, having Mason Toye back, and I'm sure we're going to talk at length about Mason Toye being back and scoring those 2 goals, but it's always nice to see him back. I know some of the old schoolers, the ones that have been there for a while, are kind of tired about me having faith in this guy, but I definitely think, and we're at this point now where every good performance by Mason Toye is gravy for CF Montreal, so we'll just take it. But it's still good to have some sort of depth, like any sort of depth right now at forward. So having him back in the fold, I think, is very interesting. Another one is Choignard as a 10. Some people not very. I know you've been vocal about that as well. That you prefer him a little farther down. I also believe that. So we'll see what happens. I think having him log in some sort of minutes there, it's better for me than having him on the wing, even though he's capable. But it's always good to have some sort of like depth, and we could see going forward what he can do. So those were kind of what struck me.
Yeah,
it's good to see Brault-Guillard again. I don't think it's a bad thing to have 2 very capable players at right wing back. Aaron Herrera is doing very well, but let's be real. The Gold Cup is coming up, and there's no way he's not getting called up by Guatemala. So having Brault-Guillard there, who is probably on the bubble or on the outside looking in for Canada, if he's doing well, that's good. We're going to have good performances from the right wing. Sorry.
Yeah.
So all of that is very positive.
All right. So a couple of things that caught my attention. Number one, Campbell is in for Waterman. Joel Waterman, who I believe has struggled a lot in the last month. That's number one. Number two, Choinière, who we've seen play many positions this year. He's a jack of all trades. He's a good player, so he can play several positions. He can play wingback. He can play 6. He can play 8. He can play 10. Personally, I think out of all the positions, he's least effective at 10 over the other ones, but he can play it. Because he was playing at 10, ahead of Duke and ahead of Miljevic, that gave an opportunity for Saliba to play as a CDM alongside Wanyama. Broguillard is in at right wing back because they've had many games in a short amount of time. So at one point, you got to give some rest to Herrera. Lapalainen is in at left wing back because they gave a little bit of rest to Lassiter. It also leads me to believe that even though recently they had tried Lapalainen as a second forward, they prefer Lapalainen either as a winger or a wing back over the forward position. So those are the things that stood out to me. Also giving Mason Toye an opportunity to start the game versus his former team instead of having Ibrahim play with Ofer, an Ofer who too has played a lot of soccer over the last little while. These are the things that stood out. Now, the man of the match, of course, is Mason Toye, who scored 2 goals. I loved his first goal. I really loved it. It's Gabriel Corbo, who threads a needle on a very long pass to Mason Toye, who draws back, gives a one-touch to Choinière, who would want to give it back, but he stumbles. There's a loose ball, and Mason Toye already in movement. Boom. He takes off. He's off to the races. He breaks away, and the finish looks amazing. The reality is, if you take a look at the replay, that when he goes to kick the ball, it redirects off of Taylor's foot, and so it goes up and over St. Clair. Nevertheless, I thought it was a fantastic goal. I thought it was a fantastic pass by Corbo. I thought it was a great reception and touch by Toye. I thought it was good of Choinière, who had the right intention. I thought it was amazing by Toye to have a striker's mentality and just break away into open space. And good by Toye for wanting to shoot from where he wanted to shoot from. I thought it was a fantastic goal. The second goal, once again, starts with Corbo, who playing left center back, changes the direction of the field, a 40-yard pass, give or take, that lands right onto the foot of Zachary Broguillard, who gets himself behind the back line, and Broguillard with a fantastic finish. That's another fantastic goal. And the common denominator, Tristan, in the 2 goals is Gabriele Corbo, who has really come on in the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm happy to say that I supported the trade when not too many others did, of sending Kamal Miller to Inter Miami for Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter, because there were holes there as a 10. There were holes as a natural left footer. There were holes as a second forward or a left winger or a wing back. But also, the one thing we didn't talk about is Corbo was brought back, and Corbo's in a great moment right now. And Corbo's playing better football than Kamal Miller played here at the beginning of the season. I think Corbo's been their best defender over the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely. But there's a lot of context here that I want to point out.
Tell me.
Yes, I absolutely agree when you say that Gabriele Corbo is possibly the transaction of the season. And I compare it a lot to when Olivier Renard brought back Rudy Camacho. I think there's a lot of similarity here, and it allowed for a lot of leeway. I think, if anything, we've heard it, we've seen it before in the last few games, but I think if any game proves that the Waterman on the left experiment is over, it was last weekend's game. It really was. I'm not going to go over all of the things that you already went over, because you did, and it's all on the line now. We've explained it, but that, I think, and in the back of my mind, I'm watching those two, especially the play that led to Zachary Bourguiar's goal. I hope that Bobby T is watching. I hope that Robert Torkelson is watching, because if I remember, most of his highlights, most of his really good actions from Iceland, reminded me of that pass, that diagonal overhead for Bourguiar. He was able to do long balls forward in Iceland. I hope that he kind of models himself onto Corbo, and that brings us even more depth for CF Montreal.
Very
speaking for
coachable
them.
player, by the way.
Absolutely.
Robert Thorkelson. Don't know how well you know him. Very young man. Those who have played with him, very good teammate. And, he'll get his opportunity at one point. And he's a left footer, which obviously are rare. And learning behind Corbo, it's a nice opportunity for him too.
And that kind of leads me to saying, a lot of people weren't fans of that trade with Inter Miami, mainly because no one really knew who Bryce Duke was or who Ariel Lassiter was. And for the people that knew who he was, Ariel Lassiter, on the positive side of things, it was an absolute great move for him, because he gets to kickstart his career, possibly at a position that, frankly, he didn't play before. But I think we can all see that he has great attributes for it, and he's playing it really well. And there's an opportunity for him, much like, might I add, Daniel Lovitz did, because Daniel Lovitz was never a left back.
Yeah.
And Daniel Lovitz now is living very well in Nashville, and got to play for the U.S. national team, which, he's not playing for the U.S. national team anymore. But I could see a similar situation for a guy like Ariel Lassiter. So look, we for Montreal, on a Montreal fan side of things, the team that you love traded away a guy that was at the World Cup, a left-footed center back, which we all know is a rare commodity, someone that a lot of people liked. Frankly, on his side of things, he was not in the right headspace. I think everybody knew that. But you trade that away.
He saw his buddy Alistair Johnston go to Celtic.
That's it, right?
And play
you
in
trade that,
Scotland's
plus you
first
trade
division.
money for two guys you don't know. It's not going to be easy. But as the memes say, let him cook.
Yeah.
And they're cooking. They really are. So
I've said for a while that I thought that Olivier Renard, when the team needed it most, gave them an electroshock by pulling the trigger on a deal where he was able to really add depth to the roster in positions where they needed it most, and kind of change up that locker room, and to give it a little bit more of a breath of fresh air at that time. I give him full credit. I give full credit to Hernan Losada, who early on in the season, we looked at what he was doing and we were saying, what is he doing? At least I did. It's probably not the type of soccer I would want the team to play, but when they play it well, it can lead to goals, and goals is entertainment, and entertainment does lead to fans. And so I liked one of the answers he gave at the end of the game on Saturday night when he was asked about kicking long balls. And, he was asked about Corbo kicking a long ball to Bourguiar and playing long ball. And he said, that's not a long ball. That's a pass. He's right. A long ball could be, getting the ball out of the zone for the sake of getting the ball out of the zone. You can't find a solution. You can't find an outlet. All of a sudden, you want to skip a line. Boom, you kick a ball long. Corbo, there was an intention behind what he did. He saw Bourguiar. He wanted to change direction of the field. He saw that he was going to be open. He put him there so he could put him in a scoring position. And so, this is a league where a lot of goals are scored. And not making the other team score is not easy in this league because of the way the rules are set up with the DP rule. A lot of teams invest in DPs either as 9s, 10s, 7 or 11s. Translation, striker, a three-quarter man behind the striker, or a winger either on the left or the right. For the most part, offensive players usually come from Europe or South America, Central America. The back line are usually North American players, and the back line, for the most part, is usually not the highest salaried players. So because of that formula, you get goals. Let's bring up a stat here at the end of the game. CF Montreal win by a score of 4-0. Take a look at Hernan Losada. And, okay, so this is not the one, but it's okay. 8 shots to 4 for CF Montreal on target. And they concede possession of the ball, 46.5 to 53.5, but it doesn't matter. They end up scoring 4. But take a look at the shutout stat. 5 games. There you go. The 5th team in MLS history to record 5 consecutive home shutout wins within a single season. You know, only the 5th team to do so. This is quite the accomplishment. And so a lot of credit to Losada, a lot of credit to Sirois, who I believe are the architects, and of course to the rest of the team for playing a certain system. But Losada deserves a lot of credit because we were wondering what the Losada blueprint was. We finally figured it out. Possession is not important if you want to have possession just for the sake of having possession. Willing to concede possession in certain situations and versus certain teams. Knowing when to press, trying to take away the ball, playing more direct, and obviously not giving goals to opponents. And it's a blueprint that right now has CF Montreal in the 9th and final playoff spot in the East, with 7 of their next games at home, where they play very well. It's encouraging, very encouraging.
I think so. I also I just want to add the caveat that, you know, I think one of the stories of the game, and not to take anything away from the 4-0, because it's still impressive. 16 shots, 4 on target. The finishing for Minnesota was poor at best.
Terrible.
It was poor at best. I was watching this game knowing full well that it seems very likely that Finnish international Teemu Pukki, the former Norwich player, went to the Euro with Finland, was one of the heroes of them qualifying for the Euro for the first time in God so many years. I just hope that they land this guy, because it was. Look, I know that they also, Robin Lod is also injured and is going to miss most of the season with, I believe, is an ACL injury. Like, there's context. But at the same time, this game, realistically, should probably have been a 4-3 win. Not to take anything away to Jonathan Sirois. I believe there was one action, I believe it was in the second half, where very aggressive. He goes all the way out of his, almost all the way out of his 6-yard box, and then goes to the flank and basically prevents a corner, not a corner kick, a cross, and it goes to a corner kick. And I believe that was just a very, very nice action. And Jonathan Sirois has been, I believe it was the last time you had me on a few weeks ago when I said they're probably are going to reintroduce James Pantemis into this because it's only the right thing to do. But right now, the decision for who is number 1 is almost over at this point. Not that I don't say that it wouldn't be a bad thing to bring him back in, Pantemis, but Sirois has done so well in his first season. And I'm always reminded of when I went to cover the Miami game for CP, and I asked Sirois, I was like, dude, do you think about that this is your first MLS season? Like, isn't that a bit crazy? And he's like, actually, I think about that every time I come out on the pitch. Like, this is all a first, and I'm being humble about it, and I'm not taking this for granted. And it like that to me seems like the absolute best way to go about it. Yeah. So there's definitely more things. And then just maybe one last point here before we go into this, into a next thing is, yes, MLS and their roster rules make it so that there's only so much money to spend.
Yes.
And if you have a very a potent back line with young guys, either from here or that you get off of some sort of a cheap deal from either Europe or South America, those are the guys that you want, because a center back is not going to sell you tickets. Only Giorgio Chiellini or Alessandro Nesta are the ones that are going to, but these guys, they're coming in, they don't know MLS and how grueling it is. So if you can get guys like Corbo, if you can get guys like Campbell, which we're seeing is working a bit better, or if you can get Camacho on a better deal than what he got to come here in the first place, those are the real good players that you want.
Speaking of Camacho, big goal by him off a header. He looked like a striker on that one. Good for him for scoring a goal. And Mason Toye scores a second goal, which of course was Bryce Duke to Sanusi down the right flank. Sanusi crosses it. Lassiter's coming across. One-timer on St. Clair, who makes a save. The ball just sits there for Mason Toye. He scores his second goal of the game. And then, of course, no celebration for goal number 1 or goal number 2 versus his former team. He comes out at the 59th minute. Chinoso Ofer takes over. And I have to tell you, I know you said good words about Mason Toye. He's been on the block in the past year, which I think is too bad, because I think there's been a couple of injuries that have set him back. I like the trade when they made the trade to acquire him from Minnesota. Personally, in my book, he's got more tools than Chinoso Ofor and Sanusi Ibrahim as an all-and-out striker in terms of ball to foot, in terms of in the box, in terms of finishing ability. The other players have their qualities as well. There's no doubt about it. But that's a great game by Mason Toye. And you talked about a young Jonathan Sirois getting a great opportunity here, and he's run with it. Well, speaking of another young player, I thought that Nathan Saliba got an opportunity to start the game. I thought he was good. I thought Saliba was good. He was more comfortable than I've seen him. And so the nerves are starting to dissipate, because there's some nerves there at the beginning. And I thought he was good. The coach removes him at halftime and, of course, subs him off. And we can understand why. He had a yellow card, so he's worried that he's going to get. And that's a good move by the coach as well. So there was some good coaching there by Losada. I thought he was active in his coaching, so that's good. But another young player doesn't get in, and he doesn't get in again. And I'm talking about Sean Rea, who, correct me if I'm wrong, but ever since he came in a game at the 71st minute and was substituted at the 94th and didn't expect to be, and looked at the coach and said, me? Really? Me? What are you doing? And wasn't happy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he hasn't got in ever since.
That's a great. I believe you're correct, and I remember watching your show that you did with Filosa about it, and there were reasonings. There was a reasoning behind it. It wasn't like out of pure frustration. Although the unwritten rule, obviously, is it's humiliating when you sub in and sub out. That's But
to be fair and provide balance, and I look personally,
exactly.
I wouldn't have subbed them off. Okay, that's just me. At the same time, the coach is the coach, the player is the player. The player cannot make a certain body language or gestures to make the coach look bad, especially when he's a young player who's making his bones. So to provide balance, like I wouldn't have subbed them off. There were other players that he could have subbed off. I do understand the reasoning. I do get that. The only thing that I find, the optics look like a player, whether it's the case or not. So hear me out here. Whether it is the case or it is not the case, the optics make it look like the player is being punished because of his body language and his reaction, which is not good. Having said that, look, they won 4-0 on Saturday nights. I mean, so there's, if they would have lost, we can make an issue out of this, but they won. So, you got to give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar.
But look, if I'm putting myself in Sean's shoes, and we're talking about a young player that's in his first season for Montreal and was, has 2 seasons behind the belt where he was the top guy. This is probably a point of pride. And this might be the first time, at least professionally, where he's dealt with something like that. And I guess I'm talking out of my rear here because I haven't watched every single game of Valor, so I'm not sure if he's lived through a moment like this. But that's kind of the flip side of having a team filled with young players. Like, stuff like that's gonna happen. And look, this is a team that has struggled with depth, and I'm not going to wish any ill will or bad luck onto this team, but they probably will face depth issues going forward as well. And they're going to need a guy like Sean Rea. Like, their whole mentality makes it so that they're going to need players like Sean Rea or like Nathan Saliba.
It's a learning moment.
So
for
it's
him.
a learning experience. I hope that he gets his shot in the near future. I think that international break is going to be good for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that having so few players chosen for Nations League, at least on the Canadian side of things, might just be a blessing, because these guys just need to shut their brains off for a few days and then come back stronger. And hopefully, maybe I'm looking a little too far in the future, but I'm really interested to see what the Leagues Cup has all about. I know a lot of people were very skeptical about it. In my opinion, the Leagues Cup should have started like the format we have now, instead of having this sort of like, a flyer ad type of like friendly games that no one really cares about.
Yeah.
There's like Champions League attached to it, especially considering that Montreal didn't win the Canadian Championship. There's another opportunity here. So there's like a lot of games. There's still a lot of runway to tap in some of those young guys, and I think Sean's gonna get better off of that sort of, if you want to call it adversity or whatever, whatever you want to call it.
Tristan, speaking of Ligue, how about Ligue 1 Quebec, formerly known as the PLSQ, of course, which is the league in which CF Montreal's reserve team plays. They had a game on Saturday night. There's an Instagram post, I believe, if we can bring it up, and they had some pro players, Jabang, Vilsaint, and Iliadis, who played the entire 90 minutes when the reserves played at Blainville. It almost seems like they want to stop the bleeding, because it's been difficult without the pros in the 3 previous games. A 2-0 loss at Outremont, a 3-0 loss versus FC Laval, a 2-0 loss versus CS Saint Laurent. I believe, was it 2-0, 3-0? I believe it was something like that. But anyway, 3 straight losses before playing versus Blainville, and Iliadis scores a goal to tie the game. Seemed, based on their social media, that they were happy with the result at the end of the game, which was a little bit odd, because they were playing a team that had 1 win, 3 losses, and 1 draw in their previous 5 games for Blainville, which had them sitting 9th in Ligue 1 Quebec. But CF Montreal, first of all, I don't know this for a fact, okay? Because I could be totally wrong here. And if I am, I'm wrong, and I'll just say it. But I don't think reserve teams and first teams play pretty much around the same time, which was odd that happened. In my ideal world, that shouldn't happen anymore, okay? Where the reserves play at 7 p.m. and the first team plays at 7:30. I mean, it's just wrong. From a scheduling standpoint, Ligue 1 Quebec, get together with the people over at CF Montreal and make sure that the games are scheduled at completely different times, so that the football fan, the soccer fan in this city, in this province, can actually go out, see the reserves play, have time to actually leave the field and either go home to watch the first team play, or have time to leave the field, leave, and go to the stadium to watch the first team play. The fact that they played 30 minutes apart, I thought was very odd, very, very odd. But they had 3 young players playing, and they needed to get them playing, Tristan, because unless pro players are playing on that team, they have a really hard time scoring goals.
Yeah, I don't know where you want me to start. I do have some choice words for Ligue 1 Quebec.
Go ahead.
That's where you want me to start with. First of all, in only 2 seasons in BC, Ligue 1 BC has already started streaming games and found a television partner. I don't remember what it is, but every week you get to see a game either on television or on their YouTube channel.
Got it.
That is in 2 seasons.
Yeah.
How long has it been? How long has the PLSQ has been a thing? And look, I understand that there are some challenges.
Well, if it's not for Anis and Montreal Cracks, you won't even see some of these highlights from these
Absolutely.
League One Quebec games. Thank God for him. Let me tell you.
So frankly, that is one thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be something to envision in the future, that you do some sort of in-house broadcast so that people could see the future of your team. That could be something. I don't think people would be asking for like the Champions League final quality of streaming. But it could be an interesting thing, an interesting avenue, especially if you're a team that markets your youth to see like, okay, in a year or two, or like Nathan Saliba was playing in that league last year and he's on the big team. Like that could be something to, farther market. I don't know how much money you'd have to go through for that, but I think that could be interesting. But that's all depending on what they want you to see, right? If they're not interested in giving out like some of the first team players that leave, well, that's another thing.
By the way, as somebody who knows that team like the back of my hand, disappointed to see Vasilios Tiniakos leave the reserves at the beginning of the week, because in my opinion, my humble opinion, the most technical player on that reserve side. But then
when it comes to on the field, well, Iliadis needed game time. We hadn't seen him for the first team in a little while. Vilsain, you probably know it more than I do, but I think he's on the road forward. Like just getting minutes any sort of minutes is positive. And then once he gets to come back and is at some sort of 100%, like with Toye coming back, with Sunusi being more confident.
So what do you mean by 100% in his case?
I'm getting full game shape. That's my understanding, because we haven't really.
You don't
seen,
think he's game shape?
Well, then why is he playing for Ligue 1 Quebec? Then why isn't he playing in MLS?
For the same reasons that Ishmael Kane was playing for U21 Saint Laurent, when the big fat guy who works on the radio at the time used to go around telling everybody that this guy will be in Europe in the next 2 years, because there's people that are not evaluating the talent the way it should be.
But then explain to me Nathan Saliba then.
What about him?
Like why is he on the MLS roster? Like I'm not saying that he's far away. That's not my my take here.
I just find it mind-boggling.
Okay.
Once again, I'm starting to sound like a broken record. I don't want to do this, but so all I'm going to say is this: I find it mind-boggling that one of the 3 greatest players that I've seen in my lifetime out of Quebec leaves at a young age, gets selected by the Sporting Lisbon Academy, in which Cristiano Ronaldo used to play for. I don't know about you, but there's not too many players out of Quebec that can make the Sporting Lisbon Academy. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Okay.
Leaves there, makes his way to Lille, ends up making the reserves because on his first game with them scores 2 goals in 14 minutes. Leaves there, goes to Antwerp, to come back, and in about 18 games in, plays 15 minutes versus a CPL team, 15 minutes in an MLS game, and he's playing in the PLSQ. I mean, why did he leave? Like playing in the PLSQ? Anyway,
but that's what I'm arguing. I'm like, so is it because is he playing there because he needs to put in some minutes in order to get a full, like at this point, I'm not even asking for a full game. I'm asking for 60.
I hear you. Yeah.
What's the timeline between the start of the season where he was injured, which is understandable. Like if you're injured, you can't play. And now, like
Mason Toye was injured too.
Can he, well, that's it. Right.
Yeah.
Like is he working up? So what you're arguing here is he working up to being able to play 60 to, let's say, a full 90? Or is it just he's down the depth chart and he's not there yet?
Well, listen, only they know. But once again, they're going to have to do something with the reserve team, because if you watch their games, and you said that you've been hoping for streaming, but if you watch some of them, there's a total disconnect on the field. The players, the automations are just, they're not there. They can't find each other. There's no chemistry. The gameplay is very, very poor. You know, you just, no matter which way you slice it, whether it's probably not the best players that are there or not, but it's all wrong. It doesn't look good on a lot of people right now. It really does not. But you know what? It didn't look good for CF Montreal at the beginning of the season. At one point, they flicked the switch, and they were able to look a lot better. So here's hoping that they can look a lot better going forward.
But here's another thing I'm wondering, and I try not to talk about it too much because the hype is going to be there, and that might not be the greatest thing. But with MLS Next on like in its last few games of the season, there's like the playoffs going on. I believe it's in Dallas. What's going to happen with Alessandro Biello? And because everyone saw what happened when he was with the Canada youth national team. He wowed a lot of people, and I believe he's like he's 17 now.
Mm-hmm.
Could this be a good opportunity for him to maybe finish off that Ligue 1 season and see what he can bring to the table? That could be an interesting.
What I'll tell you is that I would imagine at least 7 players will end up finishing their season, will be called up to join the reserves. At least 7 players. That's what I would imagine. Also hearing that at least 10 08s were cut this past week. I don't know about the 07s, but when you have at least 10 players that are cut from a certain age group, you have to wonder about the talent identification, and you have to wonder about the development that those players receive. Like, and how about your patience level? What does that say? That you take players, and then at the end of the year, you cut about 10 of them. What does that say about the talent identification? What does that say about the development or lack thereof? And how much patience do you have? And maybe they're going by their philosophy where, you know, if you're not a certain height, you're out of luck. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. And, but hey, that's up to them.
By the way, I was, I saw that last week, that the Philadelphia Union, which we know they're kind of like some sort of a standard now with their academy and how
yes, they are. Yeah.
They have added, starting this season, they've added a team in the NPSL, which is essentially the Ligue 1 Quebec of the US, or one of, because there's a lot more. The soccer landscape is more fertile in the US. So as of now, or as of 2023, they have all of their levels of academies. Then they have a team in the NPSL, which is semi-pro. They have Union 2 in the MLS Next Pro, and they have their top flight team in MLS. I'm just going to leave it there.
Well, why don't they just take a U19 team and put them in Quebec's U21 league? Instead of taking players and 1 year later cutting them. And by the way, if you're going to cut your players, can you cut them in January? So that, or February, or even March, so that when the season starts on the first week of May, those players that are cut can actually join another club and they can start the season on time. But then again, you keep them until the end because they do their entire season, and then you cut them. But then when you cut those players and you go to local clubs and you go fishing for some of the other players, now you're going to get players from local clubs that are at the midway point of their season. And some of them are affiliate clubs. How fair is it to them that you're going to get one of their best players at the midway point of the season. Because if they would have known that you wanted that player in January or February, they would gladly have given you that player, and then they prepare to get another player in that position to prepare for their season. But now you're taking away players from other teams midway into the season, and you're cutting other players, and they have to find teams. It just seems to me that there's a better way to get this done.
Yeah.
But that's just me. And who am I? Nobody. All right. Tristan D'amours. This was a lot of fun. It's the international break, of course. CF Montreal off yesterday, off Monday, off Tuesday, off Wednesday. They will be back at practice on Thursday. And then the next time they're going to be in action is going to be on the 21st of June. There's going to be plenty to talk about between now and then, especially with CONCACAF Nations League and all the good stuff. I thank you very much for joining me, and we'll talk to you again in maybe a couple of weeks or so, maybe even less.
Thanks again for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you. All right, Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free, and follow us on Twitter at SickPod CFMTL. Ciao for now.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.